Kalen Ashmore had killed 14 vampires in 3 days, and none of them had been the right ones. The 15th died badly, screaming, begging, swearing he didn't know anything about the stolen prince. Kalen believed him. Halfway through, by then it was too late, and there was blood on the warehouse floor that smelled like copper and old fear, and Kalen's hands were shaking with something that wasn't rage anymore. It was terror. 3 days. Soren's been gone for 3 days. His son, his tiny, twisted, impossible son, who'd been ripped from the royal nursery while Kalen dealt with border disputes 200 miles away. 6 guards slaughtered, half the castle burned, and the crown prince vanished into a mountain storm, with rebels who saw his curved spine as reason enough for murder. Kalen stood in the warehouse wreckage, rain hammering the metal roof above him like drumming fingers. His phone buzzed. Another dead end from his search teams. Another location cleared. Another hour closer to finding a body instead of a child. The church had been empty. The abandoned mill, empty. The old monastery where that dying rebel swore they'd taken Soren, also empty, and Kalen had painted its stones with the liar's blood. His phone rang. Unknown number. Yes, his voice was gravel and broken glass. My lord. A scout, voice tight with nerves. Police scanner, baby found behind Mountain's Edge Diner, Route 40, pale skin, red eyes. Matches the prince's description. Kalen was in his car before the scout finished talking. The drive took 30 minutes through mountain roads that twisted like intestines. Rain turned the asphalt into black mirrors. Kalen pushed the car past what was safe, past what was sane, because 3 days was too long and every minute mattered and he was terrified of what he'd find. What if he's already dead? What if I'm too late? The thoughts clawed at him. Worse were the other thoughts, the ones he'd been trying to drown in violence. What if it's easier this way? What if the court is right? Maybe this solves. No. He said it aloud, voice cracking. No, I want him back. I want my son. The diner appeared through the rain like a hallucination. Small, run down, the kind of place that served coffee tasting like regret. One car in the parking lot, lights glowing yellow through the storm. Kalen parked and sat there, engine running, rain drumming on the roof. He could smell it, faint but unmistakable, his bloodline, that scent of frost-touched granite and the charged air before lightning strikes. And underneath it, Soren. His son was in that building. Kalen's hands shook on the steering wheel. 3 days of hunting, and he'd finally found him. But he couldn't make himself move. Because what if Soren was dying in there? What if Kalen walked in and, "Move, you coward!" He got out. Rain soaked through his clothes immediately, ice-cold water running down his neck. He moved toward the diner's windows, boots splashing through, puddles, and then he heard it, humming, soft, barely audible over the rain. A melody that made every nerve in Kalen's body go rigid. He knew that song, would know it anywhere. His queen had sung it, every night, to their son. A lullaby passed down through her bloodline, ancient and protective, and a human was singing it inside that diner. Kalen moved to the window. Through the rain-streaked glass and the reflection of storm clouds, he saw her, young woman, dark hair falling out of its ponytail, stained waitress uniform with a name tag too small to read, dark circles under her eyes like bruises. She was pacing slowly behind the counter, and in her arms, Soren. Kalen's breath stopped. His son was alive, awake, those glowing crimson eyes staring up at the woman with complete trust. But it was how she held him that made Kalen's chest crack open. Soren's curved spine meant normal holds didn't work. The royal nurses with their centuries of experience fumbled with him. Even Kalen had never quite figured out the right positioning. His son had always seemed uncomfortable in his arms, fussy, like Kalen was hurting him without meaning to. This stranger had him positioned perfectly, one hand supporting the misshapen curve of his back, fingers spread to distribute pressure evenly, the other cradling his uneven legs with the thin one tucked gently against her side. She swayed as she walked, a gentle rocking motion, and the humming, that impossible lullaby, filled the quiet spaces. And Soren made soft musical sounds, content coos that Kalen had never heard before. The baby's tiny hand rested against the woman's neck, fingers curled in her hair, his twisted body completely relaxed, peaceful. Kalen stood in the rain, water running into his eyes, and watched a stranger hold his son with more natural tenderness than he'd ever managed in 3 months. She pressed a kiss to Soren's pale forehead, unbothered by the temperature, by the fangs visible when he yawned, by the twisted spine under her palm. She adjusted her grip when he squirmed, found the right position instantly, kept humming that ancient melody. She saw a baby who needed love. Kalen had seen a problem to be managed, an heir who didn't fit the mold, a son whose body made him uncertain, uncomfortable, ashamed. I'm a terrible father. The thought should have made him angry, should have made him defensive. Instead, it just made him feel hollow. 3 centuries old, king of the Northern Blood Court, warrior and strategist and leader of thousands. And he was being outparented by a minimum wage waitress who probably worried about rent. The absurdity would have been funny if it didn't hurt so much. He watched her smile at Soren, genuine, warm, uncomplicated. Watched her trace his curved spine with her finger like it was just another part of him, not something to whisper about. Watched his son gaze up at her with absolute trust. She's had him for what? A night? And she's already better at this than I've been in months. Kalen pulled his hood up and pushed through the door. The bell chimed, a cheerful sound that didn't match the moment. Inside, the diner smelled like burnt coffee and old grease, the fluorescent lights humming overhead with a sound like dying wasps. The woman turned, and Kalen saw fear flash across her face immediately. Her heartbeat spiked. He could hear it hammering, rapid as hummingbird wings. Good instincts. She knew what he was. Her voice was soft, uncertain, barely above a whisper. She cleared her throat. We're not open yet. Sorry. The storm kept everyone away, so I was just sorry. Shy. She was painfully shy, apologizing twice in 3 seconds. I'm looking for something, Kalen said, keeping his voice level even though everything inside him was screaming. Someone. Her arms tightened around Soren. Behind her back, he saw her hand fumble toward something. A knife, probably, kept under the counter. Like that would help. I don't... What? Her pulse kicked up another notch. He could smell the adrenaline now, sharp and acrid. A child. He moved closer, watching her back up until she hit the counter with a soft thump. Small, very pale, red eyes. She didn't answer, just held Soren tighter, her body angling to put herself between Kalen and the baby. Have you seen a child like that? He pressed. Please. Her voice cracked, went thready. Please don't hurt him. Kalen stopped cold. She knew what Soren was, knew what Kalen was, had to know, with those survival instincts screaming danger. And she was still trying to protect his son. From him. You're protecting him, Kalen said slowly, something like wonder in his voice. From me. She nodded, trembling but not backing down. 3 centuries, and he'd never met a human this brave and stupid at the same time. His name is Soren, Kalen said, and his voice cracked. He's my son. The woman's face went through several expressions in quick succession: confusion, disbelief, horror. Her breath stuttered, coming faster. Understanding. Oh no. The words tumbled out fast, nervous energy spilling everywhere. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I just found him behind the building in the rain, and he was so cold, and I tried to warm him up, but nothing worked except the lullaby. And I thought maybe someone would come looking, but I didn't know it was you and— Breathe, Kaylin interrupted. She sucked in air. Sorry, I talk when I'm nervous, or I don't talk at all. Usually I don't talk. But right now I can't seem to stop. What's your name? Mira. Mira. He tested it. Give him to me. She hesitated, looking down at Soren. The baby's eyes were half closed, content against her warmth. He's sleeping. Maybe we should wait until— Now. The command voice worked. She stepped forward carefully and transferred Soren into Kaylin's arms. For one perfect second, Soren's crimson eyes opened and focused on Kaylin's face. Recognition flickered there, or Kaylin hoped it was recognition. His son's tiny mouth curved like he might smile. Then Soren screamed, not crying, pure terror. His twisted body went rigid, back arching in a way that had to hurt, and he wailed like Kaylin was a monster come to devour him. High-pitched, desperate sounds that cut through the diner like breaking glass. Soren, no. Kaylin tried to adjust his grip, but he couldn't remember. Couldn't remember where to put his hands, how to angle his son's curved spine, the position that worked. Soren was fighting him, small hands pushing against his chest, screaming and screaming. His back! Mira's voice cut through the panic. You have to support his— Here, let me. She took Soren back. The screaming stopped instantly. The baby tucked against her shoulder with a shuddering breath, making small, distressed hiccups, but no longer wailing. She rocked him gently, humming that lullaby again, and Soren's breathing gradually slowed, calmed, settled. Kaylin stood there with empty arms and watched his son choose a stranger over him. I'm sorry, Mira whispered, not meeting his eyes. Her cheeks were flushed. I'm sure he's confused. He'll remember you once he's not so scared. He doesn't remember me. The thought was ice. 3 days away, and I've become a stranger to my own child. Or worse, Soren remembered him as someone who held him wrong, who'd been uncomfortable with his twisted body, who'd loved him but also wished he was different. Children knew, even infant children knew when they weren't wanted the right way. How did you figure out how to hold him? Kaylin's voice came out flat, emotionless. I felt his spine, the curve. Mira said it like it was obvious, like anyone would do the same. I just adjusted until he seemed comfortable. It wasn't that hard once I paid attention. It wasn't that hard. The royal nurses hadn't figured it out. The court physicians, with their ancient wisdom, hadn't figured it out. Kaylin himself, who'd spent 3 months with his son, had never quite managed it. And this waitress who probably made barely enough to cover rent had cracked the code in one night. The rebels took him 3 days ago, Kaylin said, moving to the window, staring out at rain and darkness to avoid looking at his son in another woman's arms. Burned the nursery, killed 6 guards. I've been hunting ever since. That's horrible, Mira breathed. They left him in the trash because his spine is curved. Kaylin's jaw tightened. Because they thought, because his body doesn't match what they expected a prince to be. Behind him, silence stretched. Then, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Kaylin turned, surprised. Mira's shyness had evaporated, replaced by quiet fury. Her voice was still soft, but there was steel underneath. He's a baby. His spine doesn't make him less. It just makes him Soren. And anyone who can't see that is. She stopped, flushing. Sorry, that was rude. He's your son. You probably don't need me telling you. No. Kalen's throat felt tight. You're right. It is stupid. He moved closer, studying her. This shy, scared human who'd saved his son without hesitation, who'd figured out in one night what Kalen had failed to learn in months, who was currently holding the crown prince like he was made of something precious. I need to ask you something, Kalen said quietly, and I need you to really think before you answer. Okay, she whispered. My son won't leave you. Whatever you did, whatever bond you created, he trusts you now. The admission tasted like failure, which means I can't take him back to the castle alone. He'll be terrified. He'll think I'm hurting him. So, what do you want me to? Come with us, just for a week, maybe two. Help him adjust. Help me. Kalen forced the words out. Help me learn how to be his father. Mira's eyes went huge. Her breath came faster. I can't. I'm just a waitress. I don't know anything about vampire courts or politics or. You know how to hold him. You know how to make him feel safe. Kalen's voice dropped. Please, I'm asking. Vampire kings didn't ask, didn't beg, but for his son, Kalen would do both. Mira looked between them, ancient vampire king and disabled baby, and he saw the moment she decided. Okay, she said softly. I'll help. Something in Kalen's chest loosened. Thank you. Then glass exploded inward. 3 vampires crashed through the diner's front window in a shower of glittering shards. Young, fast, feral-eyed, rebels, or hired muscle pretending to be rebels. Kalen moved on instinct, putting himself between them and Mira. Cold air rushed in through the broken window, bringing the smell of rain and blood hunger. Give us the child, the leader snarled, fangs fully extended. Our employer wants him back. Your employer, Kalen said softly, made a fatal mistake. He struck before they could react. The first vampire went down with a crushed throat, the wet sound of cartilage collapsing. The second tried to run. Kalen caught him mid-leap, snapped his spine with both hands, dropped the twitching corpse. The third made it 3 steps toward the door before Kalen's hand closed around his skull. Who sent you? Don't know. Don't know names. Just a job. The vampire's words came out in gasps. Take the baby to the old monastery. Someone from the court paid us. Test whether the king would come. Someone from my court. Kalen's voice went deadly quiet. Who? Didn't see faces. Just wanted to see if you'd choose the broken heir or. Kalen crushed his skull before he could finish. Blood and brain matter splattered across the floor, the smell of death filling the diner. Behind him, Mira made a small, choked sound. Her heartbeat was everywhere, frantic, terrified. When he turned, she'd pressed herself into the corner. Soren clutched tight against her chest. Her breathing came in shallow gasps, and she was shaking, but she wasn't looking at the 3 corpses leaking onto the linoleum. She was looking at Kalen, at the blood on his hands, at what he was capable of. Did you have to kill them? Her voice was barely audible, trembling. Yes, but they came for my son. Kalen grabbed a dish towel from the counter, wiped his hands clean. The white fabric turned red. There's no just. He paused, met her terrified gaze. I will not apologize for protecting him. Not to you, not to anyone. It wasn't a threat. Just truth, controlled, certain, final. Mira's breath hitched. We need to leave. Yes, more will come. You murdered 3 people. I stopped 3 vampires who tried to kidnap the crown prince. He moved toward her, watched her flinch but hold her ground. Mira, I know you're scared. I know this isn't what you signed up for. But if we stay here, the next group will kill you to get to him. Is that what you want?" She looked down at Soren. The baby was staring up at her with those red eyes, unbothered by the violence, trusting her completely. "No," she whispered, "then come with me." They stepped over the bodies and into the rain. The drive to the castle took 45 minutes through mountain roads that made Mira's knuckles go white where she gripped the door handle. Kaylin drove too fast, on purpose. The sooner they reached the castle's wards, the safer they'd be. Rain hammered the windshield, wipers squeaking rhythmically. Inside the car, it smelled like wet clothes and Mira's fear sweat, and underneath it all, Soren's scent. Frost touched granite and ozone before a storm. "So," Mira said finally, her voice small in the darkness, "do people try to kill you a lot?" "Lately, yes. That must be exhausting." Despite everything, Kaylin almost smiled. "You could say that." Silence stretched. Rain drummed. Soren made soft, content sounds against Mira's chest, those musical little coos that Kaylin had never heard his son make before. "Why do they hate him so much?" Mira asked quietly. "Your people, the rebels, everyone. Because he's not what they expected. Nobody's what people expect. Vampires are supposed to be." Kaylin's hands tightened on the wheel. "We're faster, stronger, immortal. Our bloodlines are pure. We don't get sick, don't age, don't break easily." And then Soren was born with his spine curved and his legs uneven, and suddenly he stopped. Suddenly he didn't fit the story. Mira finished. "Yes." More silence. The heater hummed. Mira's breathing had slowed, less panic now, more thoughtful. "My grandmother used to say that broken things are more honest," she offered softly, "because they can't pretend to be something they're not." She said that's why she loved her chipped teacups and the chair with the wobbly leg. They'd earned their damage by being used, by being loved. Kaylin glanced at her. "Smart woman." "She was." Mira's fingers traced Soren's spine gently, feeling the curve. "She died last year. Heart problems. I couldn't afford the surgery and the bills piled up and—" She stopped. "Sorry, you don't need to hear about that." "What was her name?" Elena Torres." Mira shifted uncomfortably. "Why?" Every muscle in Kaylin's body went rigid. Elena, his queen's name had been Ilara, and before she'd turned vampire, before she'd become his mate and Soren's mother, she'd had a human friend, a servant, someone she'd trusted completely, someone named Elena. Did she ever mention vampires? Kaylin kept his voice carefully neutral. Or the royal court? "No, she just told me to be kind, that you never know who needs saving." Mira's brow furrowed. She said it like she knew something specific, but she never explained. "And she taught me that lullaby, said her mother taught her, said it came from the old country and it was important to remember." That lullaby, the royal protection song, the one Ilara had sung every night. This isn't coincidence. "Your grandmother," Kaylin said slowly. "Did she leave you anything when she died? Any belongings?" "Just a small bag of things. Photos, some jewelry, her journal." Mira looked at him, confused. "Why? What does my grandmother have to do with everything?" Kaylin said grimly. "I think she has everything to do with this." But he didn't explain further. Not yet. Not until he was sure. The castle appeared through the rain. Ancient stone and modern security. Beautiful and deadly. Lights blazed in every window. The entire court was awake, waiting. Mira stared up at it, her breath stuttering. "That's actually a castle. I'm actually a vampire king." "Right, of course." She was talking fast again, nervous energy spilling out. "Why wouldn't there be a castle? Do you have a throne? With skulls?" "Just one throne, no skulls." Oh, she paused. That's almost disappointing. Despite everything, the violence, the fear, the corpses they'd left behind, Kalen smiled. He parked and came around to help her out. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the air was cold, biting. Listen carefully, he said quietly. My court is going to hate you. They'll see you as human, weak, beneath them. Don't engage, don't argue. Stay close to me and hold Soren. Okay, she whispered, her voice shaking. And Mira, whatever happens in there, trust me. Can you do that? She looked up at him, this ancient, powerful creature who'd murdered 3 vampires without breaking a sweat, and slowly nodded. They walked into the castle together. 30 vampires waited in the great hall, and their collective shock hit Kalen like a physical force. The hall smelled like old stone and candle wax and the metallic tang of vampire blood. Chandeliers cast flickering light across faces that had seen centuries. Whispers rose like wind through dead leaves, hissing consonants echoing off vaulted ceilings. Lord Thorne stepped forward first, his scarred face carefully neutral. My king, thank the ancients. You've returned with the prince. His gaze flicked to Mira with practiced disdain, lingering on her stained uniform. And you've brought a guest. This is Mira, Kalen said coldly. She saved Soren's life. She will be treated with respect. How progressive. Lady Seraphine glided forward, her crimson gown swirling like blood in water. She was beautiful in that ageless vampire way, sharp features, perfect skin, eyes like chips of ice. A mortal nursemaid. Tell me, how long is this arrangement? Should we prepare a guest room? Or perhaps something more temporary? Laughter rippled through the assembled nobles. Cruel, cutting laughter. Mira's shoulders hunched inward, making herself smaller. Her pulse was hammering. Kalen could hear it, could smell her fear spiking. Soren made a distressed sound, picking up on her emotions. Several nobles stepped back slightly, as if proximity to the human might contaminate them. One, Lord Victor, actually wrinkled his nose. Enough. Kalen let his power fill the hall. Cold, absolute, ancient. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. Frost formed on the windows. The next person who insults Soren's guardian will answer to me personally. The laughter died like a candle in a hurricane. Now, Kalen moved to the center of the room, forcing everyone to turn toward him. Let's discuss what actually happened 3 nights ago. Thorne frowned, his scarred face creasing. My lord, the rebels who took my son, the ones who burned the nursery, slaughtered my guards, and left Soren in the mountains to die. Kalen's voice was soft, lethal. I found 3 of them tonight, and before they died, they told me something interesting. He could see the subtle shifts. Seraphine's smile freezing in place, Thorne's hand moving unconsciously toward his sword, a few vampires exchanging glances, whispers cutting off mid-word. They said, Kalen continued, that someone from this court hired them, that the whole thing was a test, to see if I'd choose my son or my crown when forced to make that choice. The hall went deathly silent. Even the candle flames seemed to still. Before anyone could respond, Lady Cordelia stepped forward. Ancient, gray-haired, respected by everyone in the court. She'd been advisor to Kalen's father and grandfather before him. Her voice carried the weight of centuries. My king, she said clearly. I have information that may be relevant. Speak. 3 nights ago, I couldn't sleep. Old bones, you understand. A few nods from the other elders. I walked the castle gardens around midnight. I saw Lady Seraphine meeting with 3 strangers by the south gate. They were dressed as guards, but I didn't recognize them. When I asked about it the next morning, Seraphine said she'd met with no one. All eyes turned to Seraphine. That's That's ridiculous, Seraphine said, but her voice had gone tight, higher pitched. The old woman is confused, senile. She probably dreamed. I also saw something, said Lord Marcus, a younger vampire but well respected. Lord Thorne suggested the king take the border disputes personally, said it required a king's touch. I thought it odd at the time. We have perfectly capable commanders. Why send the king? And I, another voice interrupted. Lady Ashara, keeper of the royal archives, found burned correspondence in Lord Thorne's chambers when I was searching for any information. This is absurd, Thorne cut in, but his hand was definitely on his sword now. You're all multiple witnesses, Kaelin said softly. Multiple pieces of evidence. Tell me, Thorne, where were you when the nursery burned? The evidence was mounting. Multiple sources, multiple witnesses. The whispers grew louder, vampires muttering to each other, the sound building like approaching thunder. Kaelin watched Thorne's face, saw the moment the mask cracked, saw guilt and fury and desperation flash across his scarred features. It wasn't supposed to go this way, Thorne said, his voice rough. We weren't going to kill the boy, just test you, make you choose. The court needed to know. That I'd choose my crown over my son? Kaelin's voice was ice. That I'd abandon a child because his body doesn't match your expectations? His body is wrong. Thorne's control snapped. A king needs to be perfect. The other courts will see weakness, will see that we're... The only weakness, Kaelin said quietly, is in those who judge strength by appearance alone. Thorne's hand closed around his sword hilt. You're making a mistake. The court deserves. He drew his blade. Kaelin moved faster. His hand closed around Thorne's throat, lifting the larger vampire off the ground like he weighed nothing. The sword clattered to the stone floor with a ringing sound that echoed through the hall. I choose my son, Kaelin said softly. Every time, without hesitation. He tightened his grip. The crack of bone was sharp, final. Kaelin dropped the corpse and turned to Seraphine, let out a controlled breath. I will not apologize for protecting my family. She'd gone very still, eyes calculating, looking for an exit, looking for leverage. Seraphine, Kaelin said, would you like to confess, or should we let Lady Cordelia continue? You can't prove anything, Seraphine said, but her voice wavered. Thorne was the one who hired the rebels on your behalf? Kaelin moved closer. Who arranged the test while you maintained deniability? We both know you've wanted the throne since my queen died. You saw Soren's body as your opportunity. Seraphine's mask shattered. Rage twisted her perfect features into something ugly. You're a fool, she hissed. You could have let him die, could have mourned publicly and moved on, found a new mate, produced a proper heir. Instead, you're throwing away centuries of tradition for a child who'll never be strong and a human waitress. She moved, not toward Kaelin, toward Mira. Vampire speed, inhumanly fast, claws extended, going straight for the yaum. Throat. Mira's breath caught. She didn't even have time to scream, but Soren did. The baby's eyes blazed crimson gold, and a barrier of pure light erupted from his tiny body. Golden energy, ancient and protective, the manifestation of the lullaby's magic finally awakening. Seraphine hit the barrier and screamed. The light burned her, smoke rising from her skin where it touched, her flesh blistering like she grabbed hot iron. The smell of charred meat filled the hall. Impossible, she gasped, falling back. He's too young to manifest. You threatened his guardian, Kaelin said, moving to stand between Seraphine and the barrier. The protection magic responds to genuine love, to sacrifice, to someone worth saving. He looked at Mira, shy, terrified Mira, who'd instinctively started humming the lullaby when Seraphine attacked, whose voice had activated Soren's latent power even while her hands shook and her breath came in gasps. Then he turned back to Seraphine, and his eyes held nothing but cold finality. You bet everything on me being ashamed of my son. Kaelin said quietly, You lost. His hand closed around her throat. She clawed at him, fought with vampire strength, but Kaelin was older, stronger, and absolutely certain. This is what happens, he said clearly, loudly enough for every vampire in the hall to hear. To anyone who threatens my family. He ripped her throat out. Not clean, not quick. Brutal and messy and final. A king's execution for a traitor. Blood sprayed across the ancient stones. Seraphine collapsed, gurgling, trying to regenerate. But Kaelin's next strike took her head off completely. Vampires could survive almost anything, but decapitation was absolute. The body crumbled to ash. Kaelin turned to face his court, blood dripping from his hands, Seraphine's remains scattered at his feet. He let out a slow, controlled breath. I will not apologize for this, for any of it. Anyone else? His voice carried through the silent hall. Anyone else who thinks my son isn't worthy? That Mira doesn't belong here? That I should choose tradition over family? 30 vampires stared at him, some in shock, some in fear, some, like Lady Cordelia, with something that looked almost like approval. Then Cordelia knelt. The cradle-bearer has my respect, she said clearly, and the prince has my loyalty, as does the king who would burn the world for them. One by one, others followed. Not all at once. Some hesitated, looking to see what others would do. But eventually, they began to kneel. Lord Marcus was next, then Lady Ashara, then the younger nobles who'd been uncertain. For the prince, Lord Victor said gruffly as his knee hit stone, the vampire who'd wrinkled his nose earlier. Not enthusiasm, grudging acceptance, but acceptance nonetheless. More voices echoed, for the prince, for the king, for the court. All 30 vampires in that hall went to one knee. No one left, no one fled, because they'd seen what happened to traitors, and because, maybe, some of them were starting to understand. That night, after the court had dispersed and guards had been posted, after Soren had been fed and bathed and settled into his bassinet with the special padding, Mira sat alone in the chambers Kaelin had given her. It was too much. All of it. The luxury, the danger, the violence. She'd watched people die tonight. Watched Kaelin kill without hesitation. Her hands were still shaking. She kept seeing Seraphine's head rolling across the floor, turning to ash. She should be terrified, should be planning her escape. Instead, she was going through the small bag she'd grabbed from her apartment before they left. Just a few belongings, including her grandmother's things. The journal was at the bottom, wrapped in silk. Mira had never been able to open it before. It had felt too private, too painful after her grandmother died. But now, with everything that had happened, with Kaelin's questions about Elena, she opened it. The pages were yellowed, the handwriting shaky but elegant. She flipped through, looking for something, anything that might explain. A pressed flower fell out, silver and white, the same kind that grew in the castle gardens, and beneath it, a letter dated 20 years ago. My dearest Mira, if you're reading this, then the time has come. The time Alara showed me in her vision, all those years ago when we were young and I was her servant and she was still human like me. I should start at the beginning. Ilara was my closest friend before she turned, before she became queen. She had the sight, could see threads of fate weaving through time. One night, shortly before she died giving birth, she came to me in a dream. She showed me her son, showed me his twisted spine, his uneven legs, showed me the court's betrayal, showed me a baby left to die in the rain, and she showed me you, my granddaughter, grown and kind, working at a diner on a mountain road. She showed me you finding Soren, saving him, loving him without hesitation. She showed me you becoming the mother he would need, the mate the king would need, the queen the kingdom would need. So I prepared you, mi amor. I taught you the lullaby, the royal protection song she gave me permission to pass down. I taught you to see beauty in broken things, to be kind without expecting reward, to love fiercely even when it's hard. I taught you everything you'd need for this moment. You were always meant for this, meant to save the broken prince, meant to heal the grieving king, meant to show them all that perfection is a lie and love is the only truth that matters. Don't be afraid. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. All my love, Abuela Elena Mira, read it twice, 3 times, her hands shaking harder now, but not from fear, from understanding. I was prepared for this, my whole life, everything she taught me. The door opened. Kalen stood there, backlit by torchlight from the corridor. I heard crying, he said, quietly. Mira realized she was crying, tears streaming down her face, her breath hitching. She held out the letter wordlessly. Kalen crossed the room, took it, read it. She watched emotions flicker across his ancient face. Surprise, grief, wonder. My queen arranged this, he said finally, his voice rough. She saw you coming. 20 years ago, she made sure Elena would prepare you. I thought I was just being kind, Mira whispered. I thought finding Soren was luck or fate or... But she'd been preparing me, teaching me. My whole life was leading to that moment behind the diner. Yes, Kalen said softly. That's... Mira laughed, half hysterical. That's insane. That's destiny. Kalen knelt beside her chair, his cold hand covering her warm one. My queen saw that our son would need you, that I would need you. She loved us both so much that she reached across 20 years to make sure we'd be saved. Mira looked at him. This vampire king who'd killed for his son, who'd defied his entire court, who was looking at her now with something that might be love. I'm still just a waitress, she said, her voice wavering. I'm still shy and scared, and I have no idea what I'm doing. You're the woman who saved my son, who taught me how to be his father, who faced down Seraphine with nothing but a lullaby. Kalen's grip tightened on her hand. You're exactly who we need. Mira looked at the letter again, at her grandmother's handwriting, at the proof that her life had always been leading here. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll stay. Kalen's smile was like sunrise. 6 months later, the castle gardens were in full bloom for Soren's first birthday celebration. Silver and white flowers, the same kind that had fallen from Elena's letter, covered every surface. The fountain bubbled cheerfully, catching afternoon light. The air smelled like honey and sunshine and fresh earth. Mira stood on the terrace watching the court gather below. 30 vampires, the same ones who'd stared at her with contempt 6 months ago. But now they carried gifts, thoughtful ones. Lord Marcus had designed a modified training sword, weighted and balanced for a child with uneven grip strength. Lady Ashara brought books in large print with extra spacing. Lady Cordelia presented a mobility device, a small wheeled chair that would let Soren move independently as he grew, crafted from lightweight wood. They're trying, Kalen said, moving to stand beside her. I noticed. Mira smiled. She'd changed in 6 months. Not completely. She was still shy, still sometimes stammered when addressing the full court, still felt her pulse kick up when too many eyes were on her. But she'd grown into herself, found her strength. Kalen slipped his cold hand into her warm one. She didn't flinch anymore. squeezed back instead. Ready? He asked. Ready. They descended to the garden together. Soren sat in his special chair, padded and supportive, accommodating his curved spine, dressed in tiny royal robes that had been custom made. He was sitting up on his own now, head steady, eyes bright and curious. When he saw his parents, he babbled excitedly and reached for them both. Kalen lifted him carefully, perfectly, his positioning automatic now, and Soren giggled. That sound still made Kalen's chest tighten. Speech time, Kalen murmured to Mira. She took a breath. 6 months ago, the thought of addressing the court would have paralyzed her. Now she just felt nervous. Her hands trembled slightly, but she could do this. Thank you all for coming, she said, her voice carrying across the garden, still soft but steady. I know 6 months ago, many of you had doubts about me, about Soren, about whether the Northern Court could accept change. She looked around at the assembled vampires, some who still looked uncomfortable, but all who'd stayed, all who'd chosen to grow. Today, I'm announcing a new law. Mira's voice grew stronger, even as her pulse hammered. Effective immediately, all children in the kingdom, vampire and human, who are born different or become different through injury or illness, will receive protection, accommodation, and support. No child will be abandoned for not fitting expectations. No family will face shame for having a child who needs extra care. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, not hostile, thoughtful, considering. Soren taught us that strength comes in many forms, Mira continued. That different doesn't mean less. That love matters more than matching some ideal. She looked at Kalen, at their son in his arms. He changed us all, made us better, and I hope this law ensures that every child gets the same chance he did, to be loved for exactly who they are. Lady Cordelia started the applause. Others joined, slowly at first, then building. Not everyone clapped enthusiastically, but everyone clapped. The court had accepted her, accepted Soren, accepted change. After the speeches, after the gifts, after the cake that Soren mostly just smeared on his face with delighted giggles, Mira found Kalen in the garden's quiet corner. The sun was setting. Vampires could tolerate the light now, thanks to the castle's magical modifications, but they still preferred dusk. You did well today, Kalen said. I didn't throw up or faint or run away, so that's something. But Mira was smiling. Kalen laughed, a sound that still surprised her sometimes. The ancient vampire king who'd spent centuries being serious had learned to laugh again. Soren dozed in his special carrier against Kalen's chest, exhausted from his party. One tiny hand gripped his father's collar. His curved spine fit perfectly in the supportive padding. Do you regret it? Kalen asked quietly. Staying here? This life? Mira thought about it, about her small apartment, her diner shifts, her quiet, simple life before. No, she said honestly. I mean, I'm terrified most of the time, and I still can't believe this is real. But she looked at Soren, then at Kalen. But this is where I'm supposed to be. Destiny, Kalen murmured. Love, Mira corrected. He kissed her then, his lips cold, hers warm, the temperature difference something they'd learned to enjoy. When they broke apart, Soren was awake again, looking between his parents with a gummy smile. Da, the baby said clearly. Both parents froze. Did he just? Mira breathed. Da, Soren repeated, looking right at Kalen. The Vampire King's eyes went bright with tears. Mira had only seen him cry once before, the night he'd thought Soren was lost forever. Yes, Kalen whispered, touching his son's cheek with infinite gentleness. Yes, I'm your Da. Mama, Soren added, reaching for Mira with both hands, even the one that didn't quite work as well. And Mira's heart, which she'd thought was already full, somehow expanded further. Somewhere in the garden, barely audible, she found herself humming that ancient lullaby, the protection song that had saved them all. Kalen's eyes met hers, recognizing the melody. After a moment, he joined her, his voice rough, unpracticed, but learning. They stood there together, Vampire King, Human Queen, and their son, surrounded by blooming silver flowers and the sounds of celebration. The court that had tried to reject them now toasted their health. The kingdom that had seen Soren's body as weakness now saw him as heir. Perfection was never the goal, Kalen thought, holding his family close. This is broken things, loved completely, a shy waitress who became a queen, a grieving king who learned to father, a baby with a curved spine who changed an entire kingdom, not perfect, but exactly right,